morning, my name's Baden Uren. This is the second in a series of conversations that unpacks the hidden ingredients that sit behind the ways in which entrepreneurs think, reason and act. What I like to call the entrepreneurial superpower. In the first conversation, I introduced you to the overall infographic which explains this superpower. And here it is for you. It centers around the core entrepreneurial process shown in blue right in the center. And today, we're going to delve into the topic of risk, sitting in red just underneath the new idea section. So what is risk? What is our understanding of risk? I've mentioned that never before in living history have we been living in a time where so much uncertainty exists. But did you know that uncertainty itself is a type of risk? You may perhaps have heard it in the term VUCA, which stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity and ambiguity. It was first introduced back in the Iraq War. It's the first time I heard of it anyway. I think it's been around for a bit longer. But volatility and uncertainty are actually two distinct types of risk. And I'm going to use a quick little example to get you to understand what the difference between these types of risks are. Because in today's topic, we're going to explain that entrepreneurs choose to undertake activities when a certain type of risk exists. They are the masters of uncertainty, not of volatility. So it's up to us to understand the difference between those two. We'll then go on to understand the way in which entrepreneurs take risks. So first, the type of risk that they choose to undertake, and second, how they go about taking risks. So let's come back to VUCA, this VUCA world, volatility, uncertainty. What's the difference? They are both types of risk, and specifically they differ as to whether you can quantifiably measure the potential deviation away from expected. So risk at its core is deviation away from expected outcome. It's a future-oriented activity. We're looking at something that might occur in the future, and there's a risk that it might be different from that. The question becomes, can we quantifiably measure that risk? Can we quantifiably measure the potential deviation? And I'll give you a very simple example to understand how this plays out. So you might be aware of the game roulette, the casino game roulette. If you've never played it, you've probably seen it in a movie or on a picture or whatever, right? The roulette wheel in an American roulette wheel is separated into 38 individual segments. There are 18 black segments, there are 18 red segments, and there are 2 green segments which represent the cut for the house. If the ball lands on the green, the house gets the money that's on the table. See, this is pure volatility. We can quantifiably measure the chance, the probability of winning a particular bet. And let's go to one of the most simple bets. Let's imagine that we put all of our money on black. Now, there are 18 segments out of 38 that are indeed black. That means that there's a 47.4% chance of, if the ball is truly random in the way in which it falls, it landing on a black. There's a 47.4% chance of it landing on red, and the remainder is the cut for the house on green. So you can see that if you're an economically rational individual, you just won't ever play roulette because you're guaranteed to lose over time. Sometimes you'll come out on top, yes, through the vagaries of luck. But entrepreneurs don't take luck. They don't take risks such as luck. They're interested in playing when uncertainty abounds. See, volatility, you can accurately measure the potential deviation away from expected. And this is the world of strategic management. This is big business, the way in which big business plays. This is strategic management, it's Lean Six Sigma. It's all of these risk management profiles. It sits and operates down into budgets, into strategic plans, into position descriptions, into KPIs, into position descriptions. It's astonishing the way in which it permeates through existing organizations. Entrepreneurs play in a different field. They play in a field of uncertainty where you can't quantifiably measure the potential deviation away from expected. This is the world of new. This is rather than prediction, which happens with volatility, this is the world of creation. This is new products in existing markets. This is existing products in new markets. This is new products in new markets. And of course, new can be relative. New can be only slightly new, or it can be transformationally new. So this is the world in which entrepreneurs play. They play where things are not known, where they're in the world of creation. And it's because they have an entrepreneurial superpower. They have a particular way of thinking, reasoning, and acting that gives them an advantage when things are not known. So it's not surprising that today, in today's world where so much uncertainty exists, that it's the entrepreneurial individuals, it's the entrepreneurial organizations that are thriving, that are taking advantage of the opportunities that uncertainty puts forward into the marketplace, rather than being threatened of their existing position in an organization or within an industry. So that's the type of risk that entrepreneurs take, uncertainty rather than volatility. But how do they undertake risk? It turns out that there's a particular method that they use when undertaking risk. In the world of academic literature, this is a view that's referred to as effectual reasoning. Professor Sarah Sarasvathy is the author. If you'd like to dig in on the infographic, you'll see her image on that infographic. You can click on there and see a TED talk that explains this concept of effectual reasoning. But the way in which entrepreneurs tend to take risks is through a mechanism called affordable loss. They pre-commit to incremental downside risk. I'm going to say that again. They pre-commit to incremental downside risk. They look at to what stage do I next need to commit, and how much am I willing to afford, or how much can I afford to lose in order to get to that stage. And I'll reassess when I get to that point. And for some businesses, that can be quite a progressive over a long period of time as the company iterates. For others, it can happen quite quickly based upon the feedback that is gained in that build, measure, learn, agile development world that sits behind the entrepreneurial method. And I'm going to give you a quick example, one that I find quite amusing, because this is the world of minimally viable products, right? This is in order to be able to go out and test a marketplace and do it in an affordable loss basis. You need to be able to put a product or a service to market in the cheapest form you possibly can, because wealth, money, is one of the things that is at risk. You can also consider that your time is at risk, your career is at risk, your health is at risk, your family life is at risk. All of these factors are at risk when you're undertaking an entrepreneurial journey. But let's just talk about money for an example. And one of the ways in which entrepreneurs minimize the risk that is taken by launching something new to market is that they go through this minimal viable product iterative development process. A minimal viable product is literally the version of the product or service that has the lowest amount of features that are necessary in order for the customer to be able to consume the value proposition. I'll say that again so it's nice and clear. And minimally viable product is the lowest fidelity version of your product or service that allows the customer to be able to consume your value proposition. It doesn't need to be a product with all the bells and whistles, or the service that knows exactly what every component is. All it needs to do is deliver that core value proposition for the customer to be able to consume it and to provide you feedback on it, ideally to be able to pay you for it. And one of the most amazing minimally viable product case studies that exists is the creation of Virgin Atlantic Airlines. You might think, how could you possibly create a minimally viable version of an airline? But such is the way in which Richard Branson approaches starting a new venture, that it was totally done with an affordable loss basis. The way in which he undertook risk was by pre-committing to small, acceptable chunks of risk and progressively going into the foundation of that particular business. So if we take ourselves back into the early 1980s, there was a situation where Richard Branson was stuck in Puerto Rico. He was booked on an American Airlines flight to go over to the British Virgin Islands to meet his girlfriend at the time, and the flight was cancelled. And this was quite common in those days. If there wasn't enough people to be able to make it economic, or whatever the circumstances were, they literally just used to cancel flights all of the time. And it was quite disruptive to the customer. The customers themselves were quite disappointed about that, Richard Branson especially. So he, with his entrepreneurial mind, said, well, I really need to get to the British Virgin Islands. I've got quite a good payoff when I get to the other side. And he decided to charter a plane to find out how much it would cost him to charter a plane. And he went, and on a chalkboard, he wrote Virgin Airways, one-way ticket to BVI, British Virgin Islands, $39 to all of the bumped passengers. He filled up the charter plane. He'd worked out how much it needed to cost in order for him to cover the cost of the charter of their airplane. And the very first unofficial flight of Virgin Atlantic was taken from Puerto Rico to British Virgin Islands on the back of, well, I need to get to one place. There's an opportunity that exists. I'll find a way to make it happen. I'll do it in a way that minimizes the cost to me. It doesn't stop there. The very first flight that was flown by Virgin Atlantic was with a leased second-hand Boeing 747. Richard Branson called up the sales manager of Boeing and said, I'm Richard Branson from Virgin. At that stage it was Virgin Records, Virgin Megastores. I'd like to buy a second-hand 747. And he did after some negotiation, but he did it on a 12-month wet lease. So if the route didn't work out and the economics weren't correct and the company couldn't show that it was going to make money, there was a get-out clause after 12 months. So the first flight was flown between Gatwick and Newark, New Jersey. They were able to make that profitable within 12 months, and the rest is history. The company kept on growing. But you can see in the way in which Richard Branson was undertaking risk that it was this iterative, affordable loss basis on committing to a potential new venture, finding a way to put a minimally viable version of a product in front of the customer that they could consume and see whether that customer actually wanted it, using the feedback from those interactions with customers to actually build out the final product and then to scale from that perspective. So in this conversation, we've just looked at the topic of risk. It fits into this overall infographic which explains the entrepreneurial superpower. We learnt that entrepreneurs take a certain type of risk, uncertainty rather than volatility, risk where you can't quantifiably measure the potential deviation away from expected. If you can, then existing incumbent organizations will win. They have strategic planning, policies and procedures that give them an advantage when things are known. Entrepreneurs have a way of thinking, reasoning and acting which give them an advantage when things are not known. They are the masters of uncertainty. So they choose to undertake ventures when uncertainty abounds. And secondly, they undertake risk in a particular way. They pre-commit to acceptable downside risks in staged iterative approach until such time as there's enough information for them to say, okay, I'm all in on this and off we go. So my name is Baden Uren. I'm coming to you from the beautiful Burleigh Heads Beach on Australia's Gold Coast. This has been the second conversation in a series of topics centered around the entrepreneurial superpower, what sits behind the ways in which entrepreneurs think, reason and act that is different from non-entrepreneurs. In the next conversation, we'll dive into the concept of ideation and new ideas and where do new ideas come from. I look forward to seeing you then.